Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered if your mental health struggles after a cancer diagnosis could be understood in a more organized way beyond just general distress? Today, we're diving into a fascinating study that explores a new way to look at the mental health challenges faced by cancer survivors. This research is all about mental health in people who have dealt with cancer. Think about it, going through cancer treatment is incredibly tough, and it is no surprise that many survivors experience a whole range of emotional and psychological difficulties. Traditional ways of assessing these issues often focus on just general distress or common problems like depression and anxiety. But what if there is a more detailed map to understand all the different kinds of challenges people face? That is where this study comes in. The researchers here are using a framework called the Hierarchical Taxonomy of Psychopathology, or HiTOP for short. Imagine HiTOP as a really detailed, organized chart of all the different ways people can experience mental health struggles. It is dimensional, meaning it looks at these struggles on a spectrum, not just as categories. And it is transdiagnostic, meaning it can group symptoms that show up across different traditional diagnoses. They're testing a new, shorter tool based on this framework called the HiTOP Brief Report, or HiTOP-BR, to see if it works well for cancer survivors. So, what was their big question? They wanted to know if the HiTOP-BR is a reliable and valid tool for assessing the mental health dimensions that might be higher in cancer survivors. They also wanted to see if this tool could help understand the specific mental health patterns of people currently undergoing treatment versus those who have finished it. And importantly, they wanted to see how these mental health scores relate to things like physical functioning and fear of cancer progression. To figure this out, they gathered a pretty big group of people, over 700 cancer survivors. Some of them were currently dealing with cancer, and others had finished their treatment and were living beyond it. They all filled out the HiTOP-BR questionnaire online. This questionnaire asks about how certain feelings and behaviors have applied to them over the past year, using a simple scale. They also filled out other questionnaires about their physical health and their fears related to their cancer. So, what did they actually find? The results were quite striking. First off, the HiTOP-BR seemed to be a really good and dependable tool. All the different parts of the questionnaire that measured distinct mental health areas, or spectra as they call them, showed good internal consistency. This means the questions within each section were measuring pretty much the same thing reliably. Now, for the really interesting part, how do cancer survivors' mental health scores compare to the general population? When they looked at all the cancer survivors together, they found that these individuals tended to score higher on dimensions related to physical symptoms and bodily concerns, which they call the somatoform scale. This makes a lot of sense, given all the physical challenges that come with cancer. When they split the groups, things got even more detailed. People currently dealing with cancer showed higher scores across quite a few areas, including physical symptoms, emotional distress, internalizing, and even some thought-related difficulties, thought disorder and interpersonal issues, antagonism. This paints a picture of a more complex mental health landscape for those actively in treatment. Interestingly, even those who had past cancer diagnoses still showed elevated scores on the somatoform scale, suggesting that dealing with physical symptoms and bodily concerns can be a lasting impact of cancer. They also looked at how scores differed between those with current cancer versus those with past cancer. The current cancer group generally scored higher across most dimensions, but the differences were particularly large for thought disorder symptoms and antagonism. This might suggest that the immediate stress and physical burden of active treatment can exacerbate these specific areas of distress. The study also did some fancy statistical analysis to see if there is an overarching general psychopathology factor that explains most of the mental health issues, or if the specific dimensions are more important. They found that while there is a general factor that accounts for a good chunk of the variance, there is still a lot of unique information captured by the specific mental health dimensions. This supports the idea that looking at these specific areas like somatoform or internalizing is still really valuable. One of the most important parts of any research is seeing if the findings connect to real-world outcomes. And this study did just that. They found that higher scores on the HiTOP-BR, meaning more mental health difficulties, were linked to poorer physical functioning. This is a crucial connection, showing how mental and physical health are intertwined, even after cancer treatment. Furthermore, higher scores were also related to a greater fear of cancer progression in those with current cancer and a greater fear of cancer recurrence in those with past cancer. This highlights how mental health issues in cancer survivors aren't just about feeling bad. They can also fuel anxieties about their ongoing health, which is a significant concern in survivorship. The multidimensional model looking at the different spectra explained more of the fear of recurrence and progression than just a single overall score. Now, what does all this mean for us? First, the HiTOP-BR seems to be a pretty good tool for helping mental health professionals understand the specific kinds of mental health challenges cancer survivors might be facing. It offers a more organized and detailed look than just focusing on general distress. The findings about the somatoform spectrum being elevated even years after treatment underscore the importance of acknowledging the physical realities of cancer survivorship and how they can impact mental well-being. It is not just about a diagnosis, but the lingering effects. The study also did a great job of acknowledging its limitations. For instance, the sample was mostly white and lived in the US or UK, so these findings might not apply to everyone in every culture or background. Also, the measures were all self-reported, meaning people are rating themselves, which can sometimes lead to inflated connections due to shared reporting methods. Looking ahead, this research opens the door for better integration of mental health assessment into cancer care. The HiTOP-BR's brevity makes it more practical for busy clinics. The next steps would be to see how this tool can be used in actual clinical practice to improve how survivors are assessed, how their cases are understood, and how their treatments are planned. Overall, this study is a really important step in understanding and supporting the mental health of cancer survivors. It shows us that mental health is complex, especially in the context of cancer, and that a more detailed dimensional approach like HiTOP can offer valuable insights. By pinpointing these specific dimensions of distress, we can pave the way for more tailored and effective support for those navigating life after cancer. What do you think about this approach to understanding mental health in cancer survivors? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained, simply, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.